Hey everyone, welcome back to Today in Tech. I'm Juliette Beauchamp and I'm here with Macworld Executive Editor Michael Simon, as well as Computer World Executive Editor Ken Mingus. We are live on LinkedIn and on YouTube, so if you have any questions or comments while we're chatting and you want to chime in, you want us to answer your question, please do leave that in the comments or the live chat. So the topic of the day, WWDC, that is always a tongue twister for me, software announcements. Last week we talked hardware, this week software preview. So that's kind of what the event it's centered on. You know, it's all about the developers and it's about the next generation or the next iteration of iOS, iPadOS, macOS. So I guess I feel like, Mike, this is a good question to throw to you first. What can you just give us the lowdown on, like, what software updates we're expecting to be announced?
Sure, just throw me the easy question.
Yeah. Well, you know,
Am I glad you went to him first?
I mean, this is the day, the time, the week that Apple refreshes and gives us a preview of everything. So it used to just be Mac OS and iOS. Now it's Mac OS, iOS, iPadOS, watchOS, tvOS, maybe HomePod thrown in there.
I was just going to say maybe Home OS.
Yeah,
right?
Home OS is there's a rumor that they're going to spin off HomePod into a new thing, which I don't think makes sense right now. I think that makes sense once that line expands. Right now, it's just HomePod Mini, and it's just a speaker. Once these rumored speakers with screens, which I'm sure are on the way, Apple would be crazy not to enter that market. I think once that happens, then we're going to get Home OS. If it does happen now, it's just a name change. It's nothing spectacular. But the big ones are the big ones. So we'll get announcements next week. We'll get betas, dev betas probably the same week, and then public betas a couple of weeks later. So I guess we'll start with the big one, which, well, all right, it depends on
which is the big one.
Okay, yeah, tell me something. What do you think is the big one? I would say
my
it's
guess,
iOS.
my hope is so iOS got a big upgrade with iOS 14. We got the app library, home screen widgets, ability to get rid of home screens and apps and things, and that it was a pretty big update. Mac OS last year was a pretty big update as well. For one, paving the way for the Mac for the Apple Silicon processor. Also expanding its relationship with iOS, a bit of a design change, and it went to Mac OS 11. Most likely, those two will be somewhat maintenance type upgrades. That's my guess. Is iOS 15, there's always new features, there's always new stuff to get excited about. My guess is those two are, mainly performance, security, things like that. The one that I think is going to have a big part of this show, and I've been talking about this for weeks, if not years, is iPadOS. And the reason why I think that now is because of the iPad Pro. I mean, it just landed a couple of weeks ago, or it just shipped a couple of weeks ago, and it's ridiculous. It has the 12.9 inch has a crazy good screen. It has an M1 chip. I mean, it has a ton of power, a ton of performance, a ton of it's probably the best computer Apple's ever made, except it doesn't act or function or do the things that you want it to do. If that was a Mac, say it was a MacBook Air and you could pop off the screen and use it as a tablet, I mean, people would go wild over it. But the reason why the reaction to it is somewhat subdued is because of iPadOS. So I'm gonna let Ken talk, because Ken actually has one. I haven't gotten one from Apple yet. So let's see what Ken has to say about the iPad Pro.
Well, what I wanted to echo exactly what you were just saying as I was looking over the various reviews for the new iPad Pro with the M1 chip. I think every single person who reviewed it said great hardware, completely being held back by the operating system.
Yeah,
OS and the apps, exactly. And Michael, you have made this point repeatedly, and it's why I was sort of doing this when you were talking about please let there be updates to iPadOS, because if they're not, and I agree with you, I really firmly believe there will be, but if for some reason there were not going to be any major updates to iPadOS, it would be a huge missed opportunity for Apple. I mean,
more than a missed opportunity, it would basically sign the iPad's death warrant at this point.
Yeah,
because now we're going to go another a year plus, without meaningful upgrades to the iPad Pro, without a reason to buy the iPad Pro, without like a compelling reason for it to exist. And that, in my mind, is a major problem. Even if iPadOS brings high-end features strictly for the iPad Pro, because the iPad Air doesn't necessarily need that stuff. The iPad certainly doesn't.
Yeah.
That those are fine the way they are. The way that the people that buy them, the way they're used, is fine. We need Pro features for that specific model, because right now the iPad Pro is a better version of the iPad Air for no reason.
Right. There's no advantage other than you've got lots of horsepower.
Yeah, and a nice screen.
One of the first things that people were speculating on after the iPad Pro was announced was that this perfectly set up Apple to basically port Mac OS over to the iPad.
Yeah.
Do you think that's even remotely possible?
Not next week. I mean, I think I've been. It's another thing that I've been saying for a while. At some point, these two things, for lack of a better word, have to merge.
Mm-hmm.
Because right now let's say the iPad gets a proper Finder, file management, apps, multitasking, users. Let's say all that comes. It's a Mac. It's a Mac in a different form factor. So at some point there needs to be a reckoning. Okay, which way are we going here? And I think they're going to go both ways. I think that there will be a Surface type, or forget Surface, iPad Pro type device, detachable, full-size keyboard, trackpad, all that stuff, that brings what we want from a Mac and what we like about the iPad together. I mean, Apple could they could slap Mac OS on the iPad. All the parts are there. It has the storage, it has the chip, it has the memory.
I'm not sure it's touch friendly. Mac OS
Well,
as it is now,
the main
it's not
thing.
really touch friendly.
Neither is Windows 10, and it works.
Yeah.
You know?
I'm sure it would
The
work,
same.
but it would be kind of
So you have to move your finger
way.
a little bit more precisely to touch the things.
Yeah.
You know, they could do it. They could just say, "Here you go. Here's Mac OS 12 on the iPad," and people would go nuts. They would be, raucous applause, well, virtual applause, and then people would sit down and use it and say, "You know what? This isn't right because this is made for a Mac. It's different. They're different machines." And that's what Apple has to figure out. And I'm sure they're working on it. I'm sure they've been working on it for years. But
Well, they're probably working on a variety of permutations, which would take some of each and put them together on both the desktop and the iPad. It's just a matter of where they're going to wind up.
Right.
I
And
agree
also,
with you.
Apple doesn't do things unless, for one, they get it right or close to right. And then for two, it needs to be something that is feasible for the market. Right now, Apple's selling tons of Macs and tons of iPads. So I think they're happy with that split. But, 3 to 5 years, maybe 10, whatever it is, the iPhone starts to decline and people start to want to carry one device. We're working from home more, work changes, things change. We have self-driving cars. We're in the car, we're working. As the world changes, Apple will address that need. And that's where the iPad, I think, will really see its full potential.
To that point, one of the features that I like the best about the iPad Pro, and this is related to software and the new hardware, is the wide angle camera, and how if you're on a video call and it really does do that if you're on like a FaceTime call or Zoom call. And it's interesting because you don't really have to do anything. You're just centered. But if I was on my iPad Pro now and I moved over this way, the camera would shift gradually, very smoothly. And that to me actually is a response to sort of where we are in technology in the world right now, post-pandemic or, eventually post-pandemic. You've got distributed workforces, people working from anywhere. The company can be located on one side of the country and, or in another country, and you can be working from home or working at a library, working at a park, working on like vacation. The mobility aspect of the iPad Pro detached, and the ability to do things with the hardware, such as that wide angle camera, that's a differentiator there that, maybe we'll see something like that on the laptop eventually. But for now, it's a serious differentiator. If you're doing lots of Zoom calls still, and I expect we will be doing a lot of, video calls for the foreseeable future, it's a really handy, useful feature. And it's not a big standout thing. I mean, of course, they called it out at the announcement, Apple did, but that's the one thing that I've been, I think, most pleasantly surprised, in using. It's cool and it works. And it's one of those things that does set it aside as a different device.
Yeah, I wonder along those lines, will FaceTime get a revamp at WWDC? Because right now it's a very personal chat service.
You mean something along the lines of what they've done,
Of a
what
Zoom
Microsoft's
or
doing
a
with
Teams,
Teams,
or Google
Yeah.
Meet. Everyone's kind of jumped on this bandwagon except Apple. for one, there's no web component. For two, it's
And
a
it's
pain
not
in the ass to use with
cross-platform,
more than
right?
two people. Yeah, right. Yeah,
Yeah.
there's that too. And it's not fun to use with three or more people with those boxes that float around and get bigger and stuff. It's not a business thing. It's not
I
even
think,
like a social thing. I don't think.
right. If Apple were going to go in that direction, I would say they just should spend some money and buy Zoom. It's just, and seriously, incorporate it into
Yeah.
everything Apple, make it cross-platform or make sure it's cross-platform. Because I think Zoom does a lot of video in the way that I would think Apple would do it. It's a very Apple-y type software. And
Pretty easy to use.
I'm not sure, FaceTime is something that you only use when you kind of think about it and you want to contact grandma or mom.
Well, that's
or
because of the
whatever.
way Apple designed it. If it
Agreed.
was better than that, people would use it all the time, I think.
Yeah.
I mean, I certainly
That would
would at Macworld.
Oh yeah, I would too, of course. Part of that depends on whether or not Apple wants to make something of an enterprise push. 'Cause
Yeah, I
that,
mean, let's not
that's-
Right.
forget it was supposed to be open source 7 years
Mhm.
ago, whatever it was. Steve Jobs said, tomorrow we're going to the standards board and we're making this a thing, and it never happened. We
Yeah.
never heard another word about
Do
it.
we have any idea why not?
None.
Just curious.
None.
Okay.
No,
Yeah.
it just never materialized.
Yeah.
And a whisper, never again. But FaceTime is
Oh,
is,
oh,
is
you know,
really
just
good,
to-
and I think it could work well as a business style. With even if they just implemented like a gallery view for the iPad, like something simple, little steps like that make a huge difference.
Well, to the point we were making about iPad OS software and hardware, a larger screen. If you're doing video chats, a FaceTime chat, you're doing it on your phone. At most you've got 6.5 inches if you've got the biggest iPhone, 6.7. That larger screen for video chats is my go-to. If I'm doing any kind of video chats out in the yard or whatever,
You talk about
prop
the
it
iPad.
up. The iPad Pro,
Yeah.
is my go-to.
Sure.
And I don't prop my phone up. I don't hold it in my hand. I can set my iPad Pro up, do the video chat now with the movement. I'd like to see more investment there. I think doing something with FaceTime would be great. I've seen nothing, no rumors, no discussion or anything.
I mean, it's not a
that's
surprise
even on
that the rumors have been quiet. I mean, when you're talking about hardware, Apple has to make stuff. It
Yeah.
goes out to factories, and there's CAD renderings, and there's a whole bunch of teams and production facilities. So software is in-house. They don't have to send it anywhere. So that stuff's always less likely to leak. We haven't gotten any leaks really about anything. We got, just like kind of vague stuff that, the iPad's going to get the home screen stuff from the iOS. I could have predicted that, in December of last year with no sources. We haven't really seen much in the way of leaks. So it's all going to be quote unquote a surprise next week.
It'll be a surprise, but I do think that there may be an Easter egg in plain sight here with the iPad Pro, and that's the bumped up RAM.
For sure.
8 gigs and 16 gigs.
It's a ridiculously powerful laptop. Ridiculous.
It's overpowered.
Yeah.
What's there. So
I mean, it's as powerful as right now the M1 MacBook Pro. It's crazy.
Yeah, it's a solid device. So fingers crossed. We've got 5 days, 5 or 6 days. We'll know by next week.
Monday morning.
Next week this time.
Morning, afternoon, Eastern time. Morning, Pacific time.
Any sense at all about what Apple may want to do with Mac OS? Because no rumors, nothing. I don't even know where they'd go with it right now.
I mean, again, I think they're going to lean a little bit heavier into the iOS stuff, Catalyst, those apps. I mean, there's still a lot of holes there. Some apps work, a lot don't. And I think that cross synergy needs to be a little bit tighter. Mm-hmm. Other than that, I don't know. The Mac works fine. I think Apple might push a little bit more into the privacy thing. We kind of heard echoes of that during the Epic trial, that they're not happy with the way the App Store, the way privacy is handled on the Mac. The way they made one comment that said that the levels of malware are unacceptable. So perhaps we'll see some of that ad tracking stuff make its way into Mac OS 12. Couple of features here and there, maybe a settings or two. I don't know. There's you can go back 5 years, and Mac updates they're not groundbreaking anymore because
they're incremental.
It's solid. It does what we want it to do, what we need it to do. Now, the M1's out, so we don't have to, there's no architectural back end changes that need to be done. It's just a couple of features. I think there's a lot of maintenance things, optimizations that can be done, particularly for the Apple Silicon. And, I think that'll be the big thing. I suspect it'll be a pretty short part of the presentation. I think the Mac section is going to be much larger with the new chip, the hardware, and the stuff that we talked about last week.
Yeah.
Right.
Just to step back for 1 second before we move on, when you think about it, the move to the M1 processor and how smoothly that has gone, given the number of apps, we're not immediately ready for it, and Apple's ability to literally shift processors. And I'm not aware of any major, stumbling blocks that have shut down apps or companies or whatever because somebody bought a new laptop and the software wouldn't work.
Yeah, Rosetta has been great. Rosetta 2 has been great.
Yeah.
Apps have been getting updated, fairly quickly. The major ones.
We're well on the way now.
Yeah. I mean, it's for all practicalities, it's been extraordinarily successful so far.
Yeah.
And the hard part's out of the way. Those early machines, that's the hard one. The later ones are just faster and versions of what we have already.
Yeah.
Sure. So what about some of the other operating systems that are due for an update? WatchOS,
Yep.
tvOS, and then
tvOS.
Home something.
Well, HomePod. HomePod is right now. HomePod is kind of baked into iOS. It's like a
Got
firmware situation
manage it,
in
basically.
iOS. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So I mean,
I
I don't know. I don't know what we're going to see. I do know we'll get the lossless stuff for
Right.
Apple Music. That HomePod
Right.
doesn't support that yet. But there are rumors that maybe a new Bluetooth codec is coming out that will enable that. Listen, Apple has said it. We've said it. No one's going to hear a difference. The HomePod sounds fine. AirPods sound fine. There's no reason to think that you need it. The spatial audio stuff that's coming, that's already supported by HomePod. That's a little bit cooler because that's Dolby Atmos, and that's less lossless and more of like a 3D sound, like re-engineering the sound. That you might hear a difference, but that's already supported on the HomePod and the HomePod Mini. So yeah, maybe we'll get lossless for the HomePod over AirPlay. Maybe we'll get lossless for the AirPods over Bluetooth. Again, if we do, it'll just be a quick mention. So the HomePod stuff, I don't expect much. We're not going to see those speakers with screens yet. That's not ready. Those will be, we'll hear much more about that before they're ready to launch. WatchOS, there's a couple of rumors. They're saying that maybe it'll do better with what was it? Nutrition. Like the way the health app works with nutrition. I mean, all right, that's fine. My guess is there'll be some new faces, maybe more integration with third-party complications and stuff. Maybe an app or two, tighter fitness stuff. Maybe tying into Fitness Plus better, things like that. Watch again, same thing. It's iterative because the watch. I mean, what the hell are you going to do with it? It's a watch. There's only so much you can do with it.
I want to back up for 1 second to the discussion of Home OS in case people are not aware what we're talking about. This popped up in an ad that Apple had for looking for someone to do
job posting.
Job posting, and it was just mentioned in working with Mac OS, iOS, iPad OS, and was in part of the string was Home OS, which is no one's ever heard of before. The ad was quickly changed. But the reason I'm sort of familiar with it is because Johnny Evans on Computer World had a piece talking about how Apple does need to do something with these disparate things that it's got in the HomePod, for instance, and Apple TV and other devices that you may use to automate your home. And a way to do that would be to sort of tie it together in an operating system that wouldn't actually necessarily be just for the home. It's the sort of thing that could move to like office buildings and warehouses, and as a way of sort of managing the environment for buildings and offices, which I thought was a fascinating take. Who knows if this is going to happen? This is all sort of, dreaming ahead a little bit, but
the pieces are kind of there. The home app is, it's not bad. It's pretty good.
Yeah.
Get the HomePod. We have, the Siri WebKit stuff is slowly being expanded to more third-party stuff, slowly but surely, because of Apple's loosening their requirements for people who make these devices, plugs and stuff. So yeah, it's and down the line there's more of a universal standard that's coming out called, I think it's called what was it called, Ken, do you remember? It was Google, Amazon, and Apple. They and a couple other companies, they merged together.
I'm blanking. Yeah,
it was called Matter. I think it's called Matter. It was called something else, and then they just recently renamed it, but that's coming along too. If that happens, if everything's standardized, then Apple is on a level playing field with Alexa and Google Assistant,
and it needs to be.
That helps a lot. Yeah.
I
don't know if we're going to see any of that next week. I do hope we see some Siri improvements, but I say that every year. And we never really get the big one.
We never get them, but I
mean, we do. We get small incremental things, but
still sort of dumb. It's just not,
and it's behind. They need something like those Alexa Actions or Alexa Skills and Google Actions, or Google Assistant. They need something that really ties into all these different things.
It ties things together.
I mean, Amazon has this whole thing for kids that Apple doesn't have. They can tell stories. They can do math. I think Apple needs to get on board with that. It's. Can
I go off on a completely unrelated tangent?
Oh yeah, sure.
For anybody,
I like tangents.
For anybody who has an Amazon Alexa device in your house, remember the whole thing that's come up this week. They're going to turn on basically sharing your network connection with everybody, and you have to go in and turn it off.
Yeah, it's not quite as nefarious as it sounds, but you can shut it off. Yeah.
I checked. I think mine was already turned off. I'm sort of scared that it's
mine was too. I turned it off a while ago. Because it was kind of there in beta, I think.
Okay.
Something happened. But Amazon gets a bad rap for this stuff. Yeah, somewhat rightfully so. But they have done better. Ring particularly has done better in recent months with being way more transparent with their privacy stuff and baking in controls and switching.
As it's Google. Google's getting better.
All of that stuff.
And that follows Apple's lead.
I gotta think Amazon would be absolutely out of their minds crazy if this neighborhood thing was just a way for them to siphon data and IP addresses and stuff, I think. But, again,
really,
you don't need, because they're going to get found out.
I'm sure they're not doing it out of the goodness of their heart. Now your internet connection can help your neighbor.
But as a way to get these devices, add a little bit more functionality to these devices and get them to be a little bit more ubiquitous. On the surface, the tech is pretty cool. The idea of it is very cool. I guess what I'm saying is that if that's what they're doing, they're going to get found out in an hour. It's they can't hide that stuff.
Yeah.
So from what they say and from what I've read, there's a ton of privacy and encryption built into it. So we'll see. Okay. But yeah, worst case scenario is
still turned it off.
Yeah. No, go ahead, turn it off. You can.
Sure.
I'm certainly not advocating that anybody uses it. I'm just saying that I think Amazon is getting a bit of the not benefit of the doubt here because of their past discretions.
Yeah. Okay. Sorry. I know that's a tangent, but I just wanted to throw that out there when it came up.
Fair enough. We actually have, this is going to kind of, harken back to your PC World writer days, Michael.
Is it an Android question?
It's Android related. It's kind of just talking about iOS and Android interfaces, and this guy's saying that in terms of interface, he thinks that the next update they'll see is with Android, but that makes sense. I mean, iOS kind of just totally revamped its interface and what it looks like last year. So true, not true thoughts?
I don't understand the question.
I think it was more just a statement. So I guess, because iOS 14 kind of made the iPhone similar. The
more
interface
Android
more Android-esque.
Sure. I'll buy that. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think that they're just kind of saying it seems like Android is more due for an interface update than
actually
iPhone.
That in Android what is it, Android 12, that's actually coming. We already saw that that beta a couple weeks ago.
Sure.
And Google is doing a lot, and ironically, it looks a lot like iOS. I mean, all these things.
Oh, really?
Back and forth.
They all homogenize eventually.
Yeah.
I mean, listen, Apple makes pretty stuff and they make good stuff.
Good thing.
And Google will be crazy not to look at it and study it and say, well, this is what people want. And vice versa. Apple takes plenty of stuff from Google.
Correct.
Great. So iOS, iPadOS, macOS, watchOS, tvOS.
tvOS, yeah,
tvOS.
that'll come too.
Okay.
I would like to see tvOS get a bit of a major upgrade, update, what do you want to call it, refresh. So the way it is now, it's very app centric, which feels very old. It feels like it's 5-10 years ago, which it is. I go just like everybody. I have like 5 apps that I use all the time because that's the stuff I watch. What I would want to see, so Apple has a TV app that is quite the opposite. It's very much based on content, and that I would like to see that concept become the main screen. I would like to turn on my Apple TV and see a bunch of content, stuff that I might want to watch, some stuff that I have watched, stuff that I am watching. Movies that I bought, movies that I rented, like everything right there. Google does a really good job of this with their Google TV or Chromecast that they just came out with. So that's the trend, is that we don't watch apps, we watch stuff, we watch shows.
And also it doesn't matter so much where the content is, whether it's in Hulu or Amazon or Netflix or Apple. You just want the content.
Yeah, and you would still obviously have to go to those various services, but that would be more in the background. So if I see Handmaid's Tale, I click it and it starts playing. If I see, I don't know.
And it'll say you watched Handmaid's Tale, so maybe you'll like this show or whatever.
Exactly. All those recommendations would be there. And again, that's what the TV app does, and it does it really well. But I got to go into the TV app, and I often don't, because I'm like, I want to watch something that's on Netflix or something that's on Disney Plus, whatever it is. If I turned on my Apple TV and that was all there, it would feel more like a guide, more like a content engine rather than just a collection of apps on a bigger screen. Again, no rumors, no idea if any of that's coming, but it would really help Apple TV become a thing that people want to buy. Because right now it's, it is the best, I think, the best streaming box, so to speak. It's too expensive though. So there needs to be a compelling reason to buy it over like a Roku or a Chromecast. And I think that would help for sure.
Sure.
Yeah, agreed.
Yeah. That makes a lot of sense. I think sort of turning it into more like of a Netflix is because you watched this, you could watch this.
And Apple has their own stuff, and
they do. That's a good point.
I don't even know where the hell to find it, because I don't think of the Apple TV app as a portal to Apple TV Plus, because it's like everything. So if all of that stuff was on the home screen, and here's the newest Apple TV Plus. Here's all the stuff you subscribe to. Here's this show just launched. This is episode 3 of this, and it would be way more friendly and helpful towards finding the stuff I want to watch.
To your point about the Google Chromecast, I use YouTube TV as my way to watch live TV, and I will say they do a pretty good job at recommending next episodes of things. And always when I log in, it's maybe slightly embarrassing because it's always, do you want to watch these news channels or this next episode of this reality television show? So they know me well, and it's
got you covered.
It's useful. They know what they're doing.
Don't apologize for the stuff you like, Juliet.
I will. Oh, I'm not apologizing. I think I'm just, I just want to let everyone know that you may view it as embarrassing, but yeah, that's true. I'm going to own it. And I think it's great. So thank you both so much.
Watch Real Housewives all day long. Go ahead.
I do. So
no comment.
June 7th is the first day of WWDC, again, tongue twister. So, and that's when the keynote will be. So I guess, even though this is, like you mentioned, Mike, there's going to be fewer leaks. I guess we'll see what happens. And hopefully for both of you, Ken, because you actually are using an iPad all the time, and Mike, maybe just so, because I feel like you deserve it for going on and on about this for a while, update to iPadOS 15 to make the M1 really make sense.
WWDC is my favorite Apple event of the year. And I think it'll be a good week, a good day. And one more virtual event is all right by me. Because I love them. I love them.
Sure. Well, thank you, Gwen, so much for joining me. And thank you all so much for watching this episode of Today in Tech. If you liked this video, please do give it a thumbs up. And if you're watching on LinkedIn, you can head over to our YouTube channel, IDG Tech Talk, and you can subscribe there so you never miss an episode. You can also watch us live there. If you have any questions or comments that we didn't get to, please do leave them in the comments below, and I will get back to you. Thank you again for